With that, we'll close the Anarch Shortwave Listeners Net for this week. Thank everyone for participating. Appreciate the logins. We'll see you next Sunday morning at this time, 7/3, and we'll see you all next week. This is N1DK closing the SWL Net.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? Of old lang syne, my dear, of old lang syne, we'll raise a cup of kindness here for old lang syne. Oh, for old lang syne, my dear. Old lang syne, we'll raise a cup of kindness here for old lang syne.
There we go. A little tribute, I guess, to the Anarch Shortwave Listeners Net that we did for about 11 years. It got me to get my ham radio license due to the folks involved in the shortwave listening hobby, and it was a wonderful run for about 11 years. George, did that bring back any memories?
Any memories? Boy, that was great. I'm going to have to get a copy of that. That's an excellent tape.
You know, when I played it a couple of months, I played that for our New Year's show, and I played it around the turn of the century a couple of months ago, and I got such a wonderful email from Joe Buck, N2JB, and he said, Dave, and it was such a nice email, he said, Dave, when I heard that recording, it brought tears to my eyes. Likewise, when I sat here and I have a tendency to tape a lot of things and record a lot of events and stuff throughout the run of the Anarch SWL Net. There were times when I'd be rolling a tape a good portion of the time. I don't have every net tape, but I do have many of them. Back from 1990, 1991. At that last peak of the sunspot cycle or so. Yeah, boy, we sure had a real turnout. I can recall, George, just after I got my license. Again, I heard about the net in 1987, around November or so. In fact, I was listening to Glenn Hauser's World of Radio, and it may have been on WRNO at the time. And he had mentioned that there's a gathering of hams who discuss shortwave listening. And, I had gotten into shortwave listening. Again, my first experience was in the 1960s. And then I took a couple of years off, but I picked it up again in the very early 80s. And would listen to all the DX shows, and I had a log and everything. And I did hear Glenn Hauser mention that there was this gathering on 7240. So I took at the time I had a Uniden CR 2021, and it would be everything I could do just to pick up some of the other stations. I had a wire running out in the attic and everything. I had no antennas over here at the time. But listened to that for several weeks. All it took was probably a couple of weeks, and I said, okay, this is it. I went over to Amateur Electronic Supply, and I got the study manual for the license. And, well, like I say, the rest is history. I got my license in the spring, like moved up from novice to technician to finally to general in June, and was in June of 1988. When I first checked into the net. And from time to time, I still have the tape of the first time I ever checked into the Anarch SWL net. And from time to time, I play that cut also here on Cyber Shortwave Live. But George, I can remember when I joined the net, and again, everybody, everybody made everybody feel welcome. Bob Brown was a tremendous personality. I call him a personality because he had that certain charisma about him when he ran the net that you wanted to join, you wanted to participate. Well, anyway, I became a gateway station and would take gateway calls, and I got a call maybe a month or so into this thing from a man over on the west side of Cleveland. He says, "Dave, this is George, George Zeller," and you and I struck up a friendship, and that lasted for up until this day. But each week, if you recall, we would have the Pirate Radio Report on the Anarch SWL net. And I'd call you up before the net and get all your loggings, and you contributed so much to the net, and I know folks just listened, and they waited for your pirate radio tips and so forth. So what are some of your memories of the net? When did you first start listening to it? Fill us in on your thoughts on the Anarch Shortwave Listeners Net.
Well, I am an unusual participant in the ham net because I don't hold an amateur radio license, and I guess I've dug my heels in on that. And nevertheless, as you said, everybody on that net was extremely friendly. We're anxious to have participants not only amongst people with ham tickets, but everybody was interested in shortwave. And I don't remember exactly when I gravitated into it, but I do have to say one thing. I did listen to that tape, and I have a correction to the net.
Okay.
The ID of the station was the radio voice of Trailer Park Ministries. We had it mis-ID'd at first. So I know it took about 10 years, but we finally corrected that error.
We have a correction on that logging, folks. Oh, okay. Very good, very good.
But my most memorable day on the net was the day I was on it. Actually, it was more than one day, but every once in a while I used to come over to your house and gaze at your antennas, which I couldn't fit in my backyard. It made me envious every time. And actually got on the net and gave my loggings personally. So despite the fact that I don't hold a hand ticket, I had a bona fide licensed guy observing me while I spoke words over 40 meters.
Yes, you did. Yes, we had you out here several times. You and John Adams, of course, who was that famous drummer at the Indians games.
Yes, people who are not Cleveland Indians fans or don't even pay attention to baseball, if you've seen Cleveland Indians at all, you have to have seen this guy before. Since 1973, he's been going to every single game with a huge bass drum. And when the Indians get somebody on base and they're threatening to score, he starts beating out a war beat. That's been a lot more infrequent lately, if you've been looking at the standings. But I was there the first day John came. He came down and sat up where we were sitting, and I've been friends with him ever since. But he's also, I forget his ham call. It's one of those long things with too many letters that I can't remember.
Yeah, John's a ham radio operator too, and he's kind of famous too. I guess he's done some commercials, and I've heard Bob Costas. It may have been during the playoffs a couple of years ago, but I heard on the network Bob Costas mention, "Hey, there's that guy with the drums up there," and they'd zoom in on him.
I have to tell that story, Dave. This doesn't have much to do with shortwave, but when the Indians moved into their new ballpark a few years ago, the question was where were they going to put this guy with the drum, and they built him a special seat right out in the back of the bleachers underneath the scoreboard, and that's where I sit when I go. I sit with John and his wife up there, and at the World Series a couple of years ago, telecast all over. Everybody's watching it, and the Indians were apparently not doing too well, so they started showing a lot of shots of us out there in the bleachers, and Costas was making remarks about us, and that was the day we decided to hang up a K on the wall behind us every time an Indians pitcher struck somebody out.
Uh-oh.
So, and it was not only John, the drummer, and his wife, and me, but also Ted Bonda, who was the former owner of the Cleveland Indians, was sitting there with us. And the moment NBC picked to show us was after the Indians had struck out 3 guys. So there we are, sitting with this drum, and the owner of the Indians, and behind us it says KKK. And this is going out to the whole world. The week after that, I must have had at least 30 or 40 emails at least. I couldn't download it was like your QSL from St. Helens. I had so many emails about this of people that had seen me. But Ted Bonda, the owner of the Indians, also, he's extremely well known. He's a big businessman here in Ohio. Was one of the founders of Avis Rent-A-Car. And he told me he got phone calls from people he hadn't heard from for 30 years, and they were all calling him up and said, what is a nice Jewish guy like you endorsing the KKK for? So we had to explain to him what that meant, strikeout, but that was amusing.
Oh, that was funny. That was funny. And you also got a request for a QSL card, too, didn't you?
Yes, Jerry Coatsworth, who's a active shortwave listener. Many of you have heard him before or seen him at the fest once in a while. And he lives in Merlin, Ontario, which is directly across Lake Erie from Cleveland, so he gets Cleveland television easily. And from time to time, I'm on television as a result of the work that I do. And if Jerry sees me, he sends me a reception report, so that I had to make out a QSL and send it back. Where it said power, I put zillions of watts.
What's the mail drop for Zeller Shortwave?
Well,
I'm just teasing you, of course. I'm dropping my papers over here. I've got a tons of notes. As I had mentioned, this is going so well here. Just reliving some of the thoughts and memories, and we haven't touched. We've barely scratched the surface here, and we're gonna have to do this again because I know today we're not going to cram all this into 2 hours, George.
Well, that's true, but this hobby's got enough stuff to talk about. That's what makes the fest so great. We can sit there for hours and hours and talk to each other.
And speaking of the fest, there are exactly 228 days and 17 hours left to go to the, was it the 14th annual Winter SWL Fest?
Well, I can't wait.
Yes, 228 days. Now, of course, for folks who do come to the fest each and every year, it's going to be at the same place. I think it's like March 9th and 10th in the year 2001. But it's at the same location now. The inn there, the hotel has changed its affiliation. It's not a Holiday Inn anymore. It's now a Best Western. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Well, I thought maybe they could change it to the Radio Toronto Hotel by the time we have the fest.
There you go. Yeah, it's March 9th and 10th, 2001, the 14th annual Winter SWL Fest. And folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a gathering of shortwave monitoring enthusiasts, not just shortwave, but monitoring enthusiasts, and we gather there from around the world, literally from around the world, every year, and we spend a weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday or so. And we talk about shortwave. They have some of the best forums. George does a forum over there. We have a banquet speakers usually there. There's flea markets and a lot of activity there. George, how long have you been going to the Winter SWL Fest? And I remember years ago, back in the early '90s when we were talking. He's, Dave, you gotta